Welcome back. In this lecture, for part 1 of working with text files, we're going to focus on some basic print formatting, specifically with the f-string literal. We'll also discuss alignment options with f-string literals. Let's get started. Alright, I'm going to begin by showing you how before Python 3.6 you had to perform print formatting. And the way you would do this is if you had a variable, for example, person is equal to Jose, and then you wanted to insert that variable into a string you were going to print out, the way you used to have to do it is by saying something like my name is, and then you would have curly braces, and after the string, you would say dot format, and then pass in the variable name you wanted to insert in place of the curly braces. So if you run this, I now see my name is Jose. This was the old way before Python 3.6. Now 3.6 and higher now includes what's known as formatted string literals, or f-string literals for short. And some people just call them f-strings. And it actually simplifies this entire process a lot more. So all you need to say is print, and then type a single f, and then start typing out your string, and then you can say my name is, and then inside the curly braces, you can directly type in the variable name, such as person here. Essentially, this f in front of the string allows you to not have to worry anymore about this dot format call. And then when you run this, you get back the same result. Keep in mind, if you forget to type the f in front of the string, then it's actually just going to literally print out the curly braces and whatever your variable is called. So don't forget, you need to type in that f there in order to see that. Now the other thing I want to point out that's nice about this method is if you have a Python object, such as a dictionary, let's go ahead and make a simple dictionary like A, 1, 2, 3, and B with the value 4, 5, 6, you can actually do sort of operations within the f-string literal. So I can say print f, and my number is, and then inside the curly braces, I can actually perform operations like d of a. Run that, and it'll say my number is 1, 2, 3. Again, I have my curly braces here, and then inside of it, I have actual Python operations. It works the same with a list. So if I say my list is 0, 1, 2, I run that, I could, from my list, actually index an item, like 0, and then run that, and it'll say my number is 0. Okay, so again, you can do sort of just basic Python operations inside of these curly braces, inside of this f-string literal. Now, the last thing I want to go over are actually using alignment and padding when you're dealing with multiple items that you're trying to print out. And we're actually going to be using this later on in the course, specifically when we start talking about parts of speech tagging with Spatie. Spatie often prints out things in a format that doesn't look that nice and is hard to read, but luckily we can format it ourselves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste from the Python Text Basics Working with Text Files notebook a list. So again, you can open up the notebook and check out this list. This list is just a list of tuples. So if you run this and then check out library, you should see something that looks like this. I have a variable, which is a list called library, and inside this library, I have tuples, just 3 at a time, or really just 3 objects in each tuple, author, topic, and pages, and then some examples here. So what I could do is I could say for book in library prints book. Run that, and I get to see all the tuples being printed out. The other thing I could do is start using f-string literals to get a little fancy here, and then index, maybe I just want the authors off of this. So I could say, whoops, curly braces there, author is, and then run that, and it says author is Twain, Feynman, and Hamilton, and so on. So again, just using that indexing book with that for loop, it's indexing the first item off of each of these tuples. Now I could use tuple unpacking to do the following. I could say author, topic, and pages in library, and then say print out author is, and inside of these curly braces, I can just pass in author, and it's the same thing. So what I'm going to do now is print out all 3 of those items. So I'm going to say author, another set of curly braces with topic, and another set of curly braces with pages. Again, I'm just using tuple unpacking here to unpack the tuple and then passing in these variables into the curly braces. So notice that's why they're not capitalized. It's not technically anything to do with these 3 capitalized strings here. It's just tuple unpacking that I'm now inserting using f-string literals. So if you run this, you get something that looks like this. Now you may notice right away that it looks like our formatting is slightly sloppy here, and that's because we essentially aren't actually taking into account any sort of padding or any sort of space. So if I come back to this library list and make one of these titles really long, such as rafting in water alone, and let me rerun this. So now you can see I have a really long title. If I just run this, now my formatting's even worse. So I see pages and then 601's all the way over here, 95's all the way over here, and so on. And there's a variety of ways that we can add using f-string literal formatting to actually fix this sort of issue. So the first thing you can do is you can pass in an argument for a minimum width, essentially a minimum width that each of these so-called columns could take. So what you do is inside these curly braces, after the variable name, you provide a colon, another set of curly braces, and then a minimum number of spaces that should be taken up by this variable. So I'm going to add in for topic, colon, and say it should take up a minimum number of 30 spaces, and then pages, I'll say it should take up a minimum number of 10 spaces. So now when you run this, you can see that we've already begun formatting it a lot better. So author now prints out author and then adds in white space until it has 10 spaces. And then it prints out the topic and adds in enough white space until it takes up 30 spaces. And then we have pages and so on. You probably noticed that pages, it looks a little strangely aligned here. And that's because of the way that it's trying to combine this string with an integer. Now, not to worry, we can actually fix this. And there's a variety of ways we can fix this, but probably the easiest is to, in between this colon and right here at these braces for 10, you can pass in a greater than sign and then run that, and it will automatically align pages here. Now what you can also do is in between the colon and this greater than sign, you can add in whatever you want to pad the full 10 with. So what do I mean by that? Well, you'll notice pages right now, that takes up it takes up 5 characters. But we said it must take up 10 characters, which means there's actually 5 more characters here of blank white space. Sometimes you may want to fill that in with your own custom character. And in order to do that, you can just pass in a character in between the colon and this greater than sign. So I can pass in a dash. And if you run this, it's then going to fill this up with dashes. So now you notice that there's 5 dashes here, and then my 5 letters, equaling a total of 10 characters full. And so on for these guys as well. Now what I could also do is pass in a dot here, and it'll fill it in with a dot, and so on. It's really up to you, whatever you want to fill in. Dashes and dots are good choices, but you could technically like pass in a T here, and it would automatically fill it up with T's, although something like that's not very helpful. So I would recommend you use dots or dashes. Okay, so don't worry too much about getting into the weeds here about this formatting. Really, I just want you to see it first before you encounter it later on in the course. It's just a way to nicely format things into tables, especially when we're dealing with printout with the Spacey library. The last thing I want to talk about for part 1 is the ability for date formatting. And to do this, I'm going to import a date. We'll say from datetime, import datetime. I'm going to create a datetime object, which is a specialized object in Python that can hold date and time information. So we'll say the year is 2019, and the month is 2 for February, and the day is 28th. Run that, and then we can go ahead and print out, and I could say with f-string literals, just print out today. Run that, and it prints out the datetime object. You'll notice right away that the datetime object is standard, so even if you just actually grab the object itself today, it's a datetime object, and the standardized way of printing it out is year, month, date, and it also has time, which is hour, minutes, and seconds. We actually didn't provide that information to the date time, so it just defaulted to 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. Often, you're going to want to format this yourself so that it looks nicer. And the way you can do that is simply after your variable name for whatever the datetime object is, type a colon, and then you type in the formatting you want. And what you're going to do is you're going to use a specific strf time code or time reference. And you can go to strftime.org to check out a table of the directives here, which essentially means there's special codes for %, and what they mean, and an example. So for example, if I wanted to print out the month, maybe I wanted to print out the full month, then I just look it up, month's full name, and it's %, capital B. So what I do here is say %, capital B. I run that, and now I see the full month there, February. And maybe I want to see more information, like the day. I can say %D, and then February 28th, and then maybe I want to say comma, and then give me the full year. And if I look it up in the table, it's capital Y. So run that, and then we see February 28th, comma, 2019. So all you need to do is pass in your variable, the colon, and then whatever formatting you want for your datetime object. You can check out this website for full codes here, that way you don't need to memorize them. And keep in mind, I don't have them memorized, I just always look them up in this table. The common ones I do, but typically it's not something you need to worry about memorizing. Instead, you can easily look it up. All right, so that concludes our discussion on print formatting. Coming up next, we're going to talk about working with text files, creating a file, opening the file, and then reading and writing to it. We'll see you at the next lecture.